2020 was supposed to be one of the busiest years in the wedding industry in like a decade.
Typically, we have about 100 weddings. 2020, we were gonna have almost 150.
We were already doing holiday parties and starting our wedding season.
Execution of all of those events happening is May through November every year.
That's like the busiest season for photographers.
It just came to a screeching halt.
I mean, it kind of happened in a real quick flash.
Things got canceled and everyone kind of freaked out, rightfully so.
We immediately switched gears. I said, everybody work from home. We're not gonna go in the office. And we started notifying clients immediately.
We had to call hundreds of our brides, of our clients, because they were beginning alterations for the summer.
Brides were picking up the phone and starting to call us within that first week.
We really weren't sure how clients would react.
The conversations was a lot of crying.
We were going through the stages of grief with every bride. It was like crash course therapy every time I picked up the phone.
You felt like you were letting someone down. You had some tears over that. That was stressful and really sad.
I spent so many times getting off of those calls just crying, especially in the beginning when it was just like hit after hit after hit.
I was burning myself out and we just didn't have any answers.
The hardest part was to find information about how does this affect my industry.
With everyone not getting answers from like a state or a federal level, they were hoping you had like a secret bat line to the governor and knew something behind the scenes.
It was very hard to find out, like our weddings is still gonna happen.
I think as soon as Trump closed the borders, people started to panic.
There was a big uncertainty and a lot of cancellations coming at once.
Everyone was just like, okay, well, the summer will be crazy. We'll just get married in the fall.
I feel like I was more of like a Debbie Downer in the beginning, and I was telling all of them, like, listen, you guys, I don't think this is gonna be better by the fall. I think you should just push to next year.
Under normal circumstances, we don't let people move their date.
If I let a couple move their date, I can't book that again, so I just lost $3,500 now, and then also for next year, like it just replaces that, so I can't make that $500 next year.
So it was kind of a double whammy of you're not gonna get your income this year, and then next year you're gonna get half of what you should have gotten as well. So it's really like a 2-year loss for the industry.
It was really stressful just kind of dealing with loss of income, really worrying about if a couple would just kind of postpone last minute.
So all of a sudden you're having to figure out like, how do you do this with your contract and how do you do it so that it can be the same for everyone? We had to put some limitations on how far people could move without any like additional fees.
We didn't end up charging cancellation fees or change fees for postponing just because I was literally terrified of creating a hornet's nest in what was already like a bee swarm.
I think the biggest thing I had to learn this year was just not taking things personally. And we're a really personal business, right? So to have to kind of shut that off and become numb for a while was a weird feeling, but I think it was the best thing to help me sustain.
It was really, really overwhelming, a ton of pressure.
It was stressful. It was really stressful.
It was exhausting. It was exhausting to have to pivot again and again and again and try new things.
I've had a lot of clients where I've actually split their packages in two. So we'll have them get married on the original wedding day, and then we'll actually do the reception like a year later.
There were no receptions, so all of our packages had to be smaller.
You know, I had a lot of couples who had been together for 6, 7, 8 years, and they were like, screw this, we're not waiting, another year or two to get married. We want to get married now. Do you have availability next week? Can we get married in our backyard?
We started seeing brides reach out and say, hey, we're just gonna move forward.
August, we did a couple weddings with really small guest counts, 10, 20 people.
The fall, it started to get a little more normal. Venues started to open back up, and things got a little better.
Things had opened up to 25% capacity with like a 250-person cap.
Opening back up seemed like such a overwhelming thing.
There was a whole nother financial aspect of preparing to be safe.
The state and government mandates that came out were very clear. We as the venue and even as a wedding coordinator were responsible for enforcing the rules.
Event planners and venue coordinators were in charge of policing mask wearing during dancing, during eating and drinking.
Normally our job comes with a lot of happiness and smiles and celebrating. And that definitely all felt like it was wiped clean for a little bit.
It became really serious for me just to be like, please pull your mask up. It would be amazing how many people just take it off around you and you're like, oh my gosh, it would like shock your system. Please pull your mask up.
If you're an event planner, you know you can't control people. They're like cats at an event. They go everywhere. They're like water. If you try to hold it tighter in your hand, they're just gonna go everywhere. So I knew going into that was never gonna be a situation that I was gonna have control of.
Being a downtown venue, I mean, there's law enforcement going by our space multiple times every night. They can see if nobody in our venue has masks on. The fines that would result would be $25,000 or more.
There were definitely points where we weren't wearing masks, where we should have. And dance floors were not wearing masks. Next thing you know, people are getting tested positive. Next thing you know, the venue is cracking down because they feel responsible.
The mood of the event really depended on the couple and the tone that the couple would set, and whether or not they communicated what was required of their guests before they got there.
If a couple asks us, hey, you don't need to wear your mask, there's two things that go through our head. It's like, I have to wear a mask because I am a vendor and I'm providing a service. And then also it's like, I want to party and this is the couple's day and I feel bad if I don't.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like if you enforce the mandates, your client's gonna be upset with you. If you don't enforce the mandates, vendors are gonna be upset with you.
Everybody at these events are family, but we are not family. And so we don't feel as comfortable as them.
While I definitely wanted the safety of the guests to be top priority, the staff and vendors became my number one, because I didn't want anyone feeling like they were walking through our doors and were putting themselves at a higher risk.
I had to shoot some weddings where I was the only one wearing a mask.
What did that feel like?
Scary.
If I do get COVID, I mean, all these bookings, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
It was tough to stay positive during that, because if one person gets sick, our business has to close down.
Because I got COVID, it also blocked off 3 weeks of work.
To feel like you could be responsible for a super spreader event, or someone's grandma coming to the wedding and then not being around at Christmas, that's a heavy load to carry.
It took a lot to discuss this all with brides and to get them to understand.
And then another shutdown happened right before the holidays.
By that time, a lot of our dates for 2021 were already booked, and people were not getting the same availability that they wanted.
People are angry with us, which is way harder to swallow. At the end of the day, it was it was totally breaking my heart. That was the hardest part for sure, is the second shutdown.
Sleep was lost for sure in understanding what to do and worrying about money.
We still have to pay rent, and our rent is pretty significant.
Venues got hit the hardest by this because they had so much more overhead, so much more on the line. My team, we can do up to 5 events in a weekend, if not more than that. And we have a big team. We can be in a lot of places at once, but a venue is that's the space.
I think because we got some of that PPP and were able to sustain for a good majority of last year was helpful.
I have received both PPP loans. I would never have made it without the help.
We've already seen quite a few venues and caterers go under, unfortunately, in the last year.
I mean, people, when I started my business, they were starting their business, and then seeing them go out of business, it hit really hard.
Some of our really good friends aren't gonna make it through, and that sucks.
I thought we would close, even in the beginning of this year, I've had a contemplation about it, so it's been tough.
I think it's gonna take 5 years, I think, for the industry to really recover from this, just because we're already suffering again this year. I have a third round of postponements happening.
If we kind of don't bounce back from this pretty quickly, I think this will be a really hard situation to get through.
We're all crossing our fingers for a second roaring 20s.
If we can just have the aspect of after the last, pandemic and Great Depression from the early 1900s and do just the roaring 20s and skip the other stuff that happened afterwards, that would be amazing.
Some of our brides that postponed from 2020 got engaged in 2018. They've been waiting for years to get married, so they're gonna be really excited. So I'm really hopeful in that respect, but yeah, it's gonna take a while for people to make up for those losses. And for people to be comfortable to be in big groups again.
We know that people want to gather and be together, and I'm excited to be a part of that again.